This is Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, a podcast and radio program presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan.
Driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
And now, here he is, your host, Jim Ervin.
Well, hi there and welcome to Time Signatures. I'm your host, Jim Ervin, and I'm truly excited to welcome today's guest to the show. If you haven't been fortunate enough to catch her on the road, maybe you might have caught her set at the Chicago Blues Fest, a killer set, I might add. But if you missed that, I need to add a link to the episode because you've got to see it. She flat out owned the stage that day. Not bad considering it was her first Chicago Blues Fest either. She's a 12-time BMA nominee, a 4-time winner in 2019, 2020, and 24 for Horn Player of the Year, and 2022 for Contemporary Blues Female Artist of the Year, but also a Blues Blast Award winner for the Horn Player of the Year as well. And listen, there's more in the offing. I can assure you of that. It's my great honor to welcome this saxy powerhouse, Vanessa Collier. Welcome to Time Signatures. How are you?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. Now, we're going to be talking about your tour album. I promise you that. But I have to start with a little bit of background, Vanessa, because I'm relatively new to your music, as I explained to you before we started recording. How and where did you get your start in the blues?
If you want to go to the very beginning, it was like sixth grade jazz band is like playing a 12-bar blues at 6:30 or 7 in the morning. Like that is really how I started. And I fell in love with that, just understanding that you can play out your emotions without having to sing words or anything like that. You can sort of connect to everything going on in your life and express your own self, right? And so it definitely started there. And then I because you play saxophone, you get shoved in a bunch of different directions, mostly because saxophone just belongs everywhere. That's my own opinion. But you get put in the jazz world and I was there for a little bit and then really came back to the blues when I started playing with Joe Louis Walker, which was it was like the summer before my senior year of college.
Nice.
And so I met him and sat in with him in Philly. And then he was like, "Hey, you want to go on the road?" And so of course I said yes.
Yeah.
And so he's really what brought me back to the blues. I was I knew I wanted to play music, but I knew like jazz wasn't quite my thing. Like I love listening to it, but in terms of just self-expression, it's not,
right.
I don't connect to it that way. So playing with Joe sort of reconnected me to everything that I love, so Joe is so great at mixing genres. Yes, he has the blues thing. He can play it acoustic, electric, however you like it. Chicago, like any style, he's like pretty great at it. But he's also throwing gospel and funk and rock and just everything in there. And so he's really how it all got started and how I got my, dip my toes in the water and was just kind of like, yeah, this is for me. Like I got to get on the road, Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Vanessa, talk about the influences on your musical growth as you were coming up. Who were some of your big artists that you really enjoyed?
Yeah. So, early on, again, being put into the jazz world, like saxophone wise, my like all time was Cannonball Adderley, who's more of a jazz guy, but he's also playing blues over everything.
Okay.
He's one of those guys that's just heavily influenced by the blues. So he was one of my favorites on saxophone. My professor, like my teacher, my mentor is still one of my favorites. His name is Chris Vidala. So he played with Chuck Mangione for 20 plus years and
oh wow,
was the first call in the DC metro area. So like when Aretha rolled into town, when BB King rolled into town,
wow.
literally everybody, whoever rolled into town, he was the woodwind artist to call. And
Nice.
so I studied with him for 7 years and just he just had this such a joyful way of playing, that it gave me a lot of joy and love of playing this instrument without getting lost in the technicality of learning how to play it, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And then, of course, like we listened to a lot in my house. There was the Eagles and Toto and, Aretha Franklin, B.B. King, Ray Charles, all that growing up.
What a nice eclectic mix, huh?
Yeah, I mean, throw in some country from, our Texas days. Like there's just a little bit of everything in there.
Sure.
So kind of got turned on to Nora Jones and Bonnie Raitt sort of late into that, like going into college, and they became two of my big influences as well. So yeah, lots from all over.
Very cool. At what point in your life did you figure out that you were going to be involved in music professionally?
So I mean, I knew that I wanted to do it, in some capacity. I was a basketball player and I love food. And so at one point I was like, I'm gonna be a restaurateur, a basketball player, and a saxophone player. And I have no idea how, but that
Sure,
was
why
what I
not?
wanted to do. Yeah, like sure, you have all the time in the world to do all three of those things. Um, but really, like I had made the decision, like I think it was sophomore year, that I was going to leave basketball and focus on the music. It didn't quite turn out that way because my coach begged me to come back. But 10th grade is sort of my decision to pursue this fully. And that was, again, thanks to
Nice.
Chris Vinala, because I had no idea you could have music as a career.
Yeah. Let's talk about Chicago wait a minute. You have to introduce your dogs. If your dogs are going to be with you,
Yeah, they're
give
both
us their
here.
names. Yeah.
So this one back over my shoulder is Dakota, and then
Okay.
the one in front of me, she's Jazz. She's a rescue
Okay.
from Louisiana.
Very, very cool, man. And we
Yeah.
have two dogs here at the house as well. I told you about Mia Bella and Maisie. Uh,
Yes.
Crazy little. I had to close the door because if I didn't, Mia would be right here doing what Jazz is doing. So
Yep.
I want to talk about Chicago for a minute because, girl, you were on top of your game, and I'm not just blowing wind here. I'm not just making things up. I watched that entire performance. And I got to be honest, of everything that I saw from that weekend, that was one of my favorite sets. And this
Oh,
was your first time there. So I want you to talk about that experience and how well you were received.
oh yeah. I mean, Chicago Blues Fest was like bucket list item for me.
Yeah.
It had been that way for 5 years. Actually, when I signed on with my former booking agent, he asked me like, what are the top 5 festivals you want? And Chicago was like number one for me. And so to have that opportunity come up, I mean, I know it popped on our schedule and I was like, yes, I don't care about the money. Like, yes, I want to play it. Um, and I was so excited for that event coming up to it. I mean, I had just recorded a new record. I was still working on the record and just like, I don't know, it just seemed like a couple dreams were coming true all at once. This new record is great, and then to get to the opportunity to play this,
Sure.
which of course it did rain, but like for us, like three of us, I think it was our first time ever playing that festival, and we all had wanted to play it. So we all went in with this idea of like, this is totally a dream come true. We're just gonna have fun. And so we had a lot of, I mean, the Chicago crowd is like undeterred. So, you're just huddled under the part that was covered during the rain, and just like gave us all the energy in the world. And it was Shamika Copeland was sitting with her family off to the side, and it
Nice.
was just like, this is cool. This is surreal,
Yeah.
like yeah, it was great, and the reception was great. So I've had a lot of people actually come up to me and talk about this show, being like, just like, oh my gosh,
Oh yeah.
best show I've
Well,
ever
and
seen.
you had a incredible band backing you too. You can talk about them for a minute.
Totally. Yeah. So it's kind of what I call the dream team. So I had Laura
Yes.
Chavez on guitar and Scott Sutherland on bass, and then Byron Cage on drums and vocals. And, it's funny that this band, like, it's kind of the band I've always wanted. And now every time we sort of play together, it just falls into place. It doesn't, like, we just made this record, 8 songs, and we recorded 9, but we made it in like, I don't know, maybe 15 hours, like cranked them
Wow.
out, just
Wow.
because they're so great, so easy to work with. They just want the music to be good. And
Sure.
that's working with them, there's no ego from anybody. They just want the music to be great. And that's just makes my job very easy,
Yeah.
You get
Well, and it
just
was
focus
so
on it.
seamless. It was so seamless watching them play it. I mean, Laura, forget about it. She was crazy good. But
Yeah,
I got to admit, I was kind of caught off guard because I've only known you as a sax player, but there you
sure.
were on stage in Chicago wailing away on a telly, and you got some mad talents here. But do you have any other instruments that you play in your arsenal too, or no?
Yeah, I mean, so I've been on and off taking piano lessons since high school. So like
Oh, cool.
Sweating Like a Pig is something I write on piano and I play when we're not on stage. But yeah, so I play a lot of the woodwinds. I've just put flute on the new record. And then I've picked up sort of bass and drums along the way and just constantly trying to search for new ways to write, new ways to hear the music, because the bass
Sure.
player hears it from a different perspective than I would as the front person, so it's just I like to learn all the different parts and, I love good music and figuring out what makes it great and what makes it feel good. So
Yeah. But I want to turn the page here and talk about the new album, released
sure.
on the 13th of September, called Do It My Way. And you truly are doing things your own way on this one, aren't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's 8 originals, so there's not a cover on it. From start, produced the whole thing. Put flute, alto saxes, played a little resonator, and then a little bit of slide guitar as well on the telly on the mule caster. And yeah, so it's just again, I like to make records that represent me. This one's a little bit
Sure.
more soulful, funky rain that I haven't really I've dipped my toes in, but I haven't really made a full record, with that intention of sort of crossing into that world. So I've enjoyed this record from start to finish is just kind of like, yeah, here it is. Like people can love it, people can hate it, but like if I love it, that's kind of what matters to me. So yeah,
Well, it kind of caught me off guard, I'll be honest with you, because I
sure.
had just gotten done listening to your live album and I was like, oh my God, I got to hear more. And then I heard the album was being released and I talked to Nick, I think it was, and I'm
Yeah,
like, dude, you got to send it to me. And I
yeah.
listened to it and I went, well, this is different. But then I started going back and listening to your other stuff, and I believe it was a Heart on the Line album. Kind of
Yeah,
reminded me a little bit of that album because
yeah.
I guess it's safe to say that you prefer a more soulful flavor in your blues. Would that be safe?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of just depends. I kind of write what the song wants to be. So, like to me, When It Don't Come Easy is not necessarily soulful. It's more of a Southern blues kind of thing. But I love, the Etta James blues and funk and all that kind of
Yeah.
Sharon Jones, all that stuff. And so it's kind of it's just me as a songwriter, it's me as a player, it's me as a person that I kind of can't choose one particular path and just go down it. I am just varied in all of my tastes. So yeah.
Well, and let me say, I don't mind that. Some people
Yeah,
they want a cookie cutter blues or this or that or
totally.
the other thing. I like a
Totally.
little bit of everything, and I always refer to the blues as a buffet. You take a little of
Sure.
this, you take a little of that to your liking. You don't
Yeah,
have to have everything the way I like it. And
for
that's
sure.
that's the thing that I like about the blues. But
Yeah.
um now I noticed a recurring theme that was woven throughout this album. And I don't
Hmm.
normally pick out particular songs, but the one that caught my eye was Rosetta. And I'd like you to talk about
Yeah.
that song for just a minute. That's got quite a message in it. Yes?
Totally. Yeah. So, I can't remember when, but I learned about Sister Rosetta Tharpe a few years ago, and then just kind of like learning, like of course, I love her music. She is someone who, when you watch her, the few recordings we have of her performing, if you watch her perform, she is such a great entertainer. But other than that, she is at that point, pushing the guitar into this realm that everyone kind of picked up on. Elvis Presley is someone who picked up on it and
Yeah.
turned it into his own thing. So she's such an inspiration, and yet no one knows her name. And yet, like, her grave sat unmarked, I think, until 2013 in Philly.
Wow.
And so it's just like she has been such a backbone of where blues music has gone, of where R&B music has gone, and yet we don't really celebrate her. And so, I just wanted to, she's one of my heroes for sure. I mean, just wailing on a guitar, and all the things that she had achieved were unheard of for a woman, let alone a Black woman in that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And she sold out like huge stadiums, and went to Europe and all these things. I think anyway, her wedding still has like one of the highest attendees, I'm pretty sure. But anyway,
Wow.
besides that, I just wanted to write something that celebrates her, that lifts her achievements into the light. And,
Sure.
whoever hears the record will hopefully go dig into her stuff. And, Laura's, that's one of the first things that we kind of bonded over, was doing sort of something Rosetta style. And so, yeah, this one is just, it was great to have her on it, and, just celebrate Sister Rosetta Tharpe.
Very cool. Um, and I want to ask you about this because a lot of the females that are in the blues don't seem to get the regard that a lot of the males do.
Sure.
And I know that you addressed a lot of there. You actually, I think that's why I talk about the theme that was woven throughout the album was a decidedly female type of a theme through it. And I really, I liked it, because it was recurring, and there were different songs that spoke about the strength of women. And talk about that for just a minute.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think historically women have kind of been underestimated. And definitely I have felt that. I kind of graduated from college thinking like the music industry can't be what it was. Like when the major labels said, you have to look like this, you have to do this, you have to do this to kind of make it. And then I made a record with an independent record label, and it was sort of the same thing of like, oh no, we can't sell records without, with a woman looking serious on the cover. It's like, what are you talking about? It's a serious record. Why do I have to be smiling and looking? You know what I mean? So I
Yep.
think the industry is it's very antiquated, still to this day. And not to say that there aren't people fighting and aren't people changing it and paying attention. But on the whole, there is still this inequity that's going on. And so it's been my experience. I've been in the industry now for 10 years under my own name, and you still experience that, whether it's the pay gap or whether it's just
Yeah.
generically how people may treat you at a festival or ask things of you that they're not going to ask, my male counterparts on the scene. So it definitely is. It's just my truth right now. I'm not
Yeah.
complaining about it, but it does
No.
take a lot of strength to be a woman, and to be a woman in this industry, and to survive, and to do it in the way and dictate terms rather than have these things put on you. So that is definitely, do it my own way. That is absolutely like, I'm here, I'm doing it the way that I want to. And if you don't like it, that's kind of your problem, not mine. You know what I mean?
Right. Well,
Yeah.
I interviewed Joanna Connor and the Women of Chicago Blues in as they were getting ready to do their program just before Chicago Blues Fest kicked off. And
Yeah.
that was one of the things that she mentioned is there's been a lot of inequity involved in the music world. And I've always had an open door policy for blues musicians. I don't care if you're male, female, don't matter to me. If I
Yeah.
if I catch your music and I dig it, I want to hear
Yeah.
more about it.
Absolutely.
And so I'll
Absolutely.
say the same thing to you. The door is always open,
Well,
whenever you
thank
need to
you.
promote something. But
I appreciate
but yeah,
it.
I like to see the things that you are doing, the things that Joe Bonamassa is doing to change that culture,
Yeah.
so that people don't have to believe that they have to have a big record label behind them. Labels are
Totally.
good, labels are good,
Totally.
but you
Yeah.
don't have to. You can do it your own way if you want to.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
I'm
Yeah.
going to turn the page once again here. The Keep It Saxy tour it
Yeah.
kicked off on September 6th. It's coming to a city near you soon. Sadly, those of us in Michigan are going to have to wait until early 2025, but trust me when I tell you we will be there. rooting for you at the Token Lounge in Westland. I want you to talk about the tour for a minute and what fans can expect from your show.
Yeah, I think honestly, I'm still in the process of figuring out how to change the show. I mean, you mentioned the live record that I put out in 2022, 2 years ago, and that was sort of a staple of like who I have become over the last 9, 10 years. And now I'm sort of at this point where I'm sort of changing direction. I'm going to definitely play the stuff that people love, but I'm also going to play a lot, I'm playing a lot from the new record. And so figuring out what fits where and, how to design a new set. And that's
Yeah,
always, takes some trial and error. So that's what we're doing is just trying some different stuff every night, trying a few different things from the new record, and then keeping the staples. But always, my intention is always about connection. So one
sure.
thing I feel like we don't have in the world, largely because we're on screens and we're on social media and we're on all these things, which are great. But the downside is that when we're face to face, we're not in the present moment and we're not connecting, and I feel like that is important. So my whole point is to tell stories and connect with people, and hopefully that whatever the story is, it's going to connect to something in your life, and hopefully uplift you. That is the whole thing. We want to leave you
Sure.
dancing and smiling and feeling better than you did before. So high energy stuff, but definitely thinking about, what can I give to the audience? What can I leave them with? And hopefully, it's just kindness, dignity, respect. Like those three things are staples in my show. So that's my
Wonderful.
plan.
There you go. Well, there's a great deal of talk about keeping the blues alive, Vanessa.
Yeah.
There appears to be a nice crop of younger musicians coming to the fore these days, yourself included.
Thank you.
It's been said that to keep the blues alive, you have to be willing to take it a little further down the road. But there's no instruction manual for this change. What keeps the blues alive? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I am not a stickler, I would say, in deciding, the blues has to stay like this or blues has to be this. I think for me, keeping the blues alive is keeping the spirit alive. And what I love about blues music is it is very improvisational. It's very like direct and to the point. It's very much about life. And so keeping that spirit alive, R.L. Burnside wrote some great stories. It's just whatever speaks to your soul to me is what the blues is. And if it happens in a minor 12 bar, great, or if it's inspired by those 12 bar, then even better. So I think it is about connection. It's about pizzazz. It's about, just putting your own little stamp on something, whether you're playing with a butter knife, or you're playing with your fingers or, whatever. It's very much got to be you at all times.
Absolutely. Vanessa, where can people go to purchase your music, buy some merch, maybe even book you for a show?
Absolutely. So the website is definitely the central hub for everything. VanessaCollier.com. Collier is the last name. And then, of course, we're up on all the streaming sites, all the music's up there. But if you want a t-shirt or anything, you can buy directly from me at the website. And I usually hand pack them and ship them out as well.
Oh,
So it is
wow.
directly coming from me.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, Vanessa Collier, my sincere thanks and appreciation for taking some time out of your day to talk with us. I appreciate it. Certainly an exciting thing to watch this new album come out. I wish you much success on that and look forward to seeing you in February.
Yes, I can't wait. Thank you so much for having me on, Jim. I really appreciate it. And it's
And
been good
just
talking to you.
and just know that anytime if you have an album coming out, if you have a tour coming up, if you have some news of any kind, you just reach out to us. We'll get you back on without a question. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, that wraps up this edition of Time Signatures with Jim Ervin. Once again, my deepest appreciation to Vanessa Collier for being with us today. But more importantly, I appreciate all of you for taking time to check us out. After all, wasn't for you guys, none of this would be possible. Jim Ervin reminding you that keeping the blues alive is everyone's responsibility, but preserving the history of the blues one story at a time is my mission. Until next time, so long.
This has been Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan. For more information on cabs, visit capitalareablues.org. You can find this episode and past episodes at lccconnect.org. The Time Signatures theme song, Michigan Roads, is used by permission and was written by Root Doctor, featuring Freddie Cunningham.
You know I'm trying, baby, driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
Until next time, keep on keeping the blues alive.